I couldn't resist, his tool was so huge. Today, I'm going to tell you how I cleared my husband's debt with his loan shark. Since we had no money, this was the only way. I know many of you will judge me, but I did what I had to do to save my marriage. Welcome to the channel Infidelity Stories. My name is Anne, and I'm 32 years old. I've always been the kind of woman who receives compliments wherever I go. I've been married to Andrew for 5 years. He's 43. We got married shortly after discovering I was pregnant. Andrew has always been a hard-working man, someone who faces life's challenges like any regular guy. Ever since he inherited his father's bar, he dreamed of turning it into something bigger. The bar was the center of our lives, where we spent most of our time. It was small but cozy, attracting loyal customers who came for good drinks and lively conversations. Andrew was known for his charm and the way he treated customers. He knew everyone's name and what they liked. His loyal customers, the regulars, would always return for the bar's special drinks. This created a family-like atmosphere where everyone felt at home. After some time, Andrew started noticing that the customers wanted more than just drinks. Many mentioned missing something to eat while they enjoyed their beverages. That's when he got the idea to expand the bar and add meals. In his mind, it was the right step to attract more customers and increase profits. And he wasn't wrong. But to make this dream a reality, Andrew knew he needed money, and that's when he made his first big mistake. Unable to get a bank loan, Andrew turned to a loan shark and borrowed $20,000 to renovate the bar. He thought he was doing the right thing, that this investment would be the boost the bar needed to become even more successful. I believed in him too. We both saw the bar as our future, something we could leave for our son. But deep down, I had a gnawing fear that things might not go as planned, and unfortunately, my fears soon started to come true. The renovation began the day after Andrew got the money. He hired builders, bought new furniture, and ordered a modern grill for cooking meals. In the following weeks, the bar became a construction site. Andrew spent hours overseeing every detail, from choosing the paint colors to the type of wood used for the new tables. I saw the sparkle in his eyes every time a step of the renovation was completed. He was confident that he was building something that would bring in huge profits, a legacy that would last for generations. As his wife, I stood by his side, rooting for his success. When the renovation was finally finished, the bar looked like a different place. The newly painted walls brought new life to the space, and the new tables and chairs added a touch of style. The shiny new grill seemed ready to serve the best meals in town. On reopening night, Andrew was as happy as he was on our wedding day. He organized free shots of liquor with every paid one and hosted live music and discounts throughout the night. It was the busiest night ever, and the meals were flying off the grill, with customers praising the food. But that initial success didn't last long. In the following weeks, business began to slow down. The customers who came on opening night didn't return as frequently. Andrew realized that keeping the kitchen running required more effort than he had anticipated. The cost of ingredients was high, and the profit margins were smaller than expected. On top of that, the competition in town was tough. Other established bars and restaurants had loyal clientele, and it wasn't easy to attract them to our bar. As days passed, Andrew became more worried. I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, but he tried to hide it from me. He was too proud to admit that things weren't going well. Then came the problem with paying the loan shark. Andrew managed to make the first few payments, but with the drop in business, he started falling behind. The loan shark, who had initially seemed laid back, soon revealed his true colors. He started showing up at the bar more frequently, not just to collect money, but also to drink for free, increasing the debt even more. With each visit from the loan shark, the atmosphere in the bar grew more tense. Andrew tried to avoid confrontations, but I could see the desperation growing inside him. He knew he was losing control of the situation, but didn't know how to fix it. I tried to comfort him, telling him things would get better, but deep down I was also worried. The dream we built together was crumbling before our eyes. the loan shark's presence in the bar became unbearable. He drank, ate, and humiliated Andrew in front of customers. No one knew about our financial struggles, but it was impossible not to notice. Customers started staying away, and the bar, once full of joy and laughter, became a dark space where fear and anxiety loomed over us. At one point, Andrew considered selling the bar, but the thought of it was too painful for him. Selling the bar would mean admitting defeat, giving up the dream he inherited from his father and worked so hard to keep alive. Plus, the bar wouldn't sell for enough to clear the debt. Meanwhile, I watched in silence. I knew the situation was critical, but I also knew Andrew wouldn't accept my help. He was too proud. But the idea of losing the bar, our family's livelihood, was something I couldn't bear. And it was at that moment, when the pressure became unbearable, that a risky idea began to form in my mind. Something I never thought I would consider. But under the circumstances, it seemed like the only way out. As the days went by, the pressure on us only worsened. I could feel the tension growing both at the bar and at home. Andrew started losing sleep, tossing and turning at night, full of worry and fear about what was happening. He barely spoke, just nodding when I asked how things were going. I knew he was trying to protect me, but I also knew the situation was more serious than he let on. That's when the idea first hit me, almost like a whisper in the back of my mind, a desperate measure for a desperate situation. I had cheated on Andrew before, something he never found out about, and something I had always carried with me as a dark secret. But now, that past infidelity seemed insignificant compared to what I was contemplating doing. What if I used my unfaithfulness for something else? Something that might save the bar and pull Andrew out of this mess? What if I could use that mistake from the past to fix our present? I asked myself over and over again if I could actually go through with it. The loan shark was a dangerous man, and the thought of getting involved with him made me anxious. But at the same time, there was a strange sense of power in knowing that I might be able to solve the problem once and for all. I knew it would be dirty, something I could never tell anyone about, not even Andrew. But what was at stake was our family's future, and at that moment, it felt like I was willing to pay any price to protect it. In the days that followed, the idea grew stronger with every visit from the loan shark. Finally, I made a decision. I would do whatever it took to save the bar, even if it meant betraying Andrew in a way he could never imagine. That night, I felt the weight of everything we were going through lift slightly. Andrew had gone out for yet another unsuccessful attempt to borrow money, leaving me alone at the bar. The customers were almost non-existent, and the silence only amplified the desperation bubbling inside me. I was nervous, knowing that the loan shark would arrive soon. When he walked in, a chill ran down my spine. His cold gaze was intimidating, a man who had clearly seen it all. Without saying a word, I invited him to the back of the bar, where we kept our stock of drinks. Each step towards the storage room felt like it took forever. My mind was racing with thoughts, but I have to admit, there was a strange thrill too. I was nervous, but it was a nervousness mixed with adrenaline. As soon as I closed the door behind us, I felt the room closing in on me, suffocating me. Slowly, I began to remove my clothes piece by piece. As each item of clothing hit the floor, I asked him if there was any other way to settle my husband's debt. Without a second thought, he moved towards me, his intentions clear. He might have thought I would change my mind at the last moment, but I was determined. There was no turning back now. When it was over, I sat in that small, stuffy room, reflecting on what I had done. I had taken the first step in my plan. The debt wasn't cleared in one go. The loan shark wanted more, as if I was his interest payment. So we made a deal. He would return twice a week for a month, and each of our encounters would count as a part of the debt being paid off. After that first night, something changed inside me. Instead of feeling the weight of what I had done, I discovered a part of myself that felt alive, excited even. The loan shark didn't say much about what had happened. He just told me he'd be back to collect his payment. I took his number so we could arrange the next meetings. It was a dangerous game, but at the same time it was addictive. The bar continued to operate, and Andrew went about his usual routine, completely unaware of what was happening in the shadows. He was relieved because the pressure from the loan shark seemed to ease, believing that his negotiations were finally working out. I watched in silence, happy to know that I was helping in a way he could never imagine. It felt like I was playing a game, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. When Andrew left for a quick errand, I wasted no time messaging the loan shark. This time, I didn't hesitate. There was an excitement growing inside me, something I couldn't explain, but that drove me forward. When he arrived at the bar, we exchanged a brief glance, and a knowing smile passed between us. We didn't need to say anything. We both knew what was about to happen. There was something liberating about breaking the rules, about exploring a side of myself that had always been hidden. I led him to the back room again, and this time there was no nervousness. Every move was calculated, every touch filled with a fire I had never felt before. The small, stuffy room that had once seemed shameful now became our private space, a secret only we shared. I was in control, and that feeling was intoxicating. The debt was gradually shrinking, but that wasn't what mattered most to me anymore. What truly captivated me was the thrill of the secret, the adrenaline that rushed through my veins with every encounter with the loan shark. I enjoyed the sensation of having something all to myself, a secret that made me feel alive. In the days that followed, I found myself eagerly anticipating the loan shark's visits and messages. It had become a personal adventure, a dangerous game that I was more than willing to keep playing. I was no longer just the wife fighting to keep the bar open. I was someone who had found unexpected pleasure in the chaos. The truth was, I didn't care anymore about what was right or wrong. What mattered most was the excitement of the moment, and I was determined to keep exploring it, savoring every second. As the weeks passed, the encounters with the loan shark became an expected part of my routine. What had started as a desperate move to save Andrew's bar had now turned into something more. I found myself craving those secret moments, as if they were an escape from the monotony of everyday life and a reaffirmation of the control I had over the situation. During each visit, the loan shark and I exchanged fewer words, but the understanding between us was clear. The back room, once just a simple storage space, had become the stage where I explored a new version of myself. There, I wasn't just the devoted wife or the caring mother. I was a woman discovering her own fantasies and desires. As the end of the month approached, the debt was almost fully repaid. But by then, it wasn't about the debt anymore. The encounters that had initially seemed like a nightmare turned out to be some of the most exciting moments of my life. On the final night, when the loan shark came to the bar, I felt a mix of excitement and sadness, knowing that our agreement was coming to an end. As we met one last time in the back room, I was filled with a strange sense of longing. The loan shark, who once seemed to be in control, now looked at me differently. I left that room knowing that I had been changed forever. The debt was settled, but I found myself wondering if I should continue seeking more excitement. With the debt cleared and the bar running smoothly again, Andrew was happier than ever. He believed our success was the result of his hard work, and I let him think that. Meanwhile, my mind wandered, consumed by thoughts that went far beyond the day-to-day life we shared. Despite the outward calm, I couldn't shake the desire for more. I started looking at Andrew differently, with a mixture of affection and frustration. He was a good man, but he was satisfied with what we had. I, on the other hand, felt a growing restlessness. I didn't just want stability, I wanted excitement, danger, and above all, to feel the power that I had experienced over the past few months. So, what do you think of my story? Do you think I should continue chasing those desires and fantasies, or settle for the life I have with Andrew? Let me know your thoughts. I'm curious to see how others perceive the transformation I've gone through. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. As the days passed, I found it harder to settle back into the normal routine. The debt was gone, Andrew was at ease, and the bar was doing better than ever. Yet something inside me felt off, like an itch I couldn't scratch. Life was supposed to feel good now, right? We had overcome the financial crisis, Andrew was back to being his usual hard-working self, and I had played a significant role in saving our future, albeit in a way no one could ever know. But I didn't feel satisfied. The secret I carried, the excitement from those secret meetings with the loan shark, lingered in my mind. It wasn't about him. It was about the thrill, the power I had felt, the danger of the unknown, the freedom of stepping outside the bounds of my daily life. That part of me, the part that had come alive, wasn't ready to disappear just because the debt was gone. I wanted more, but I didn't know how to find it. Andrew was oblivious to my inner turmoil. He believed that his negotiations had paid off, that his hard work and persistence had been the key to pulling us out of the mess. I let him believe that, and in a way, I was relieved. But the more he praised his own efforts, the more distant I felt. I couldn't talk to him about what I was really feeling, not about the guilt or the strange longing for more danger, for more excitement. I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The loan shark stopped coming to the bar. Our agreement had ended, and with it, so had the intense, secretive encounters that had filled my life with adrenaline. But I couldn't stop thinking about him. Or more precisely, I couldn't stop thinking about what those moments had given me. An escape, a rush, a sense of control. Without that, everything felt dull, predictable. It wasn't about loving Andrew any less. But there was a part of me now that wanted more than just the safety and security of our life together. One evening, as Andrew and I sat together at the bar, I found myself watching him more closely. He was talking about the future, about how things were looking up, about how the bar was finally on the right track. I nodded, smiled, even joined in the conversation, but my mind was somewhere else. I wondered how he would react if he knew the truth. What would happen to our marriage if he found out how I had really settled the debt? But that wasn't the only question haunting me. I also wondered if I could ever go back to the way things were. Was it possible to just put everything behind me and be content with the life I had? Or was this new version of me, the one who craved risk and excitement, here to stay? Days turned into weeks, and my restlessness grew. I began taking longer walks around town, sometimes stopping by other bars and restaurants, observing people as they went about their lives. I was searching for something, though I wasn't sure what. I just knew that I wasn't ready to let go of the feeling I had discovered, the power, the danger, the escape. One afternoon, while walking through the city, I passed by a cafe where I saw someone familiar, an old friend from my single days, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. His name was David, and he was someone I used to see socially before Andrew and I settled down. We had shared a few flirty conversations back then, but nothing serious had ever happened between us. Curious, I stepped inside and approached him. He was surprised to see me, but quickly broke into a smile. We exchanged pleasantries, catching up on life, work, and everything in between. As we talked, I could feel something stirring inside me, something that I hadn't felt in a while. David had always been charming, and our conversation had an easy flow. There was an undercurrent of attraction between us, one that hadn't gone away even after all these years. Before I knew it, I found myself agreeing to meet him for coffee again. And then again. It didn't take long for our meetings to become something I looked forward to, something that brought back the excitement I had been missing. At first, I told myself it was innocent, just two old friends catching up. But deep down, I knew better. David was nothing like the loan shark. He wasn't dangerous, and our encounters didn't have the same high-stakes intensity. But there was a spark. Something that made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. With him, I could be someone else. Someone free from the responsibilities of running a bar, from being a wife and a mother. I could be just Anne, and that was enough. As our meetings continued, I felt the lines blur between friendship and something more. We started to meet in more private settings, quiet cafes, out-of-the-way bars where no one would recognize us. The conversations grew deeper, the touches more frequent. And with each passing day, I found myself wondering how far I was willing to go. Would I cross the line again? Could I? Or had I already started? Andrew remained blissfully unaware of what was happening. He was focused on the bar, on making it a success, and I played my part, supporting him as I always had. But my mind was elsewhere. With David, with the thrill of the secret life I was building once again. I wasn't sure where this was all headed, but one thing was clear. I couldn't go back to the way things were. The old version of me was gone, and the new Anne was still hungry for more. As my meetings with David became more frequent, I found myself living two completely separate lives. By day, I was the supportive wife, helping Andrew run the bar, making sure everything stayed afloat. By night, or whenever I found a spare moment, I was slipping away into this new world I had created with David. It wasn't a full-blown affair yet, but it was heading in that direction. The attraction between us was undeniable, and every conversation, every touch, felt like a step towards something I couldn't resist. At first, I justified it. I told myself that I had earned this escape, this little indulgence. After all, I had done what was necessary to save our family's future. Andrew was happy now, completely unaware of the sacrifices I had made. But as my feelings for David grew, the guilt started to creep in. Not just for what I had done with the loan shark, but for what I was doing now. I was playing with fire again, and deep down, I knew that this time, the consequences could be far worse. One afternoon, as I was getting ready to meet David, I received a text from him. "Can't wait to see you. Let's talk about that trip we mentioned." A trip? We had talked casually about going away for a weekend, but I hadn't taken it seriously. Now the idea was out there, and my heart raced at the thought. It was tempting, so tempting to imagine getting away from everything, from the responsibilities of the bar, from Andrew, from the weight of the secrets I had been carrying. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how dangerous this was becoming. I was standing at a crossroads. I could either step fully into this new life I was creating with David, or pull back before it was too late. But pulling back meant confronting the mess I had made, both with the loan shark and now with David. I went to meet him that day, but something in me had shifted. As we sat in the small cafe, talking about everything and nothing, I felt a growing sense of unease. David was charming, easy to talk to, and undeniably attractive. But he wasn't Andrew. He wasn't the man who had stood by me through thick and thin, who had shared dreams with me and built a life together. I tried to focus on our conversation, but my mind kept drifting. What was I really doing here? Was I willing to risk everything I had built with Andrew for a fleeting moment of excitement? The loan shark had been a desperate move, but David was a choice, and it was a choice that would have lasting consequences. As David leaned in, his hand brushing mine across the table, I suddenly felt overwhelmed by the weight of it all. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. Excusing myself to the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Who was I becoming? The woman staring back at me wasn't the same person who had married Andrew, who had stood beside him through thick and thin. She was someone else, someone I barely recognized. I returned to the table, but something had changed in the air between us. David sensed it too. He gave me a questioning look, but I just smiled weakly. I knew I had to end this, but the words wouldn't come. I wasn't ready yet. Over the next few days, I avoided David's texts. I told him I was busy, that the bar needed more attention, that Andrew and I were trying to focus on rebuilding our lives. It wasn't a lie. We were doing better. The bar was thriving, Andrew was happier than ever, and our life was starting to feel stable again. But there was still that restless part of me, the part that wasn't satisfied with stability. One evening, as Andrew and I sat in the bar after closing, he turned to me with a smile. "Things are finally looking up, huh?" he said, his eyes twinkling. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Anne. You've been my rock through all of this." His words hit me harder than I expected. I had been his rock, yes, but only on the surface. Beneath it all, I had betrayed him, in ways he could never imagine. I felt a lump form in my throat, and for a moment I thought about telling him everything. the loan shark, the meetings with David, all of it. But I couldn't. It would destroy him and us. Instead, I just smiled and nodded, pretending everything was fine. But inside, the guilt was eating me alive. The next day, I met David one last time. I had to end it before it went too far, before I crossed a line I couldn't come back from. We met at a small park, away from the usual places we frequented. David was smiling when he saw me, but as soon as I sat down, he could tell something was wrong. "What's going on, Anne?" he asked, his voice full of concern. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "David, I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice trembling. "I thought I could, but I can't. I love my husband, and it's not right." David looked at me, his expression unreadable. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just nodded slowly. "I understand," he finally said, his voice soft. "I'll miss you, but I get it." There was no drama, no pleading, just a quiet acceptance, and somehow that made it even harder. But I knew I was doing the right thing. I stood up to leave, but before I could walk away, David grabbed my hand gently. "If you ever need anything, you know where to find me," he said, his eyes full of understanding. I nodded, pulling my hand away and walking off without looking back. As I left the park, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I had closed the door on something that could have ruined my life, but the emptiness that followed was hard to shake. Back at the bar, life went on as usual. Andrew never suspected a thing, and I continued to play the role of the supportive wife. But inside, I knew I had changed. The excitement, the danger, the thrill, they were gone now, replaced by the steady, predictable rhythm of daily life. Yet, even as I tried to move on, a part of me still craved more. The Anne who had crossed those lines, who had tasted that forbidden freedom, wasn't going to disappear so easily. And while I had closed the door on David, I couldn't shake the feeling that my story wasn't finished yet. Before you leave, remember to subscribe.